Highguard is officially dead. 45 days. That was the lifespan of a project 4 years in the making. To put that into perspective, it outlasted Concord by about a month. But that's not saying much when you've burned through over $100 million. The worst part? To anyone paying attention, this wasn't just a failure, it was inevitable. It's hard to say that TJ announcement actually helped or just signed the game's death warrant. Sure, it grabbed everyone's attention, launching with nearly 100k players at peak is no small feat, but we all know what kind of attention that was when you are watching the Game Awards and they tease a final reveal from industry veterans. Nobody's expecting another generic hero shooter. It's no wonder the backlash was instant. People weren't just skeptical, they were biased against the game before it even stood a chance. I'll admit I was disappointed the second I saw it, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I decided to wait for the release and give it a fair shot. But no miracle happened, and despite high online numbers at launch, they dropped rapidly after just a couple of days, and a week later there were literally only 10,000 people left in the game. I think this is a good indicator and proof that the game simply turned out to be boring and uninteresting for most players. Of course, we could try to discuss in more detail why this happened, what the game's main problem is, how the gameplay could have been improved and so on. But I don't just want to talk about Highguard, I want to talk about why we are seeing this pattern. Massive budgets, giant investors and huge publishers, yet they can't even hold a player base at launch, or in some cases can't attract an audience at all. How is it that, in their pursuit of profit, publishers have lost touch with that we actually want? How can we spot a flop from a 2-minute trailer, while the suits in charge are completely blind to it? Simply put, this isn't just about Highguard, it's about a new genre of games, the Concord-Likes. In one of my previous videos, I mentioned how publishers like Sony put a fortune into live service projects that were eventually cancelled and will never see the light of day. I believe the Concord disaster played a key role in this. Sony realized the game simply wasn't worth their effort and shifted their strategy, axing most of their live service pipeline. However, not everything was scrapped. For instance, we recently saw the release of Marathon, a game mainly predicted would suffer the same fate as Concord. It's a paid extraction shooter set in an old, long-forgotten gaming universe with an unusual art style, yet it features numerous simplifications compared to genre behemoths like Tarkov. Aside from the fact that the genre itself isn't exactly a mainstream hit, the game was plagued by scandals that seriously tarnished its reputation, and let's be honest, not all of those complaints were unfounded. We are talking about everything from the initial lack of proximity chat to the whole stolen art controversy. But thankfully, after that wave of backlash, the devs actually listened. The game was sent back for some much needed polishing, and now that it's finally out, it's holding a solid player count. Even the Steam reviews have stayed mostly positive, which is a huge win considering how it started. Honestly, I haven't played the game myself, and I wasn't looking forward to it because until recently I thought the extraction genre wasn't for me at all, until I played Arc Riders, after which I changed my mind. If you want to know more, there's a video on my channel too, you can click on the link and listen to the details. So, even without having played the game, it's already clear that it won't be joining the ranks of Concord's hits anytime soon. That said, the game does have its own unique style, decent gameplay, and a decent enough player base. Though I suspect the online player count will drop further down the line, I don't think it's headed for the same fate as Highguard. However, it's clear that Sony was counting on a more successful reception and launch after such a long development period and significant investment in the project, so I wouldn't be surprised if its current leadership decides to start scaling back support for the game or worse yet, begins layoffs at Bungie. But honestly, as a gamer, I just want to wish Bungie and Marathon all the best, because if we have more great games, we will all benefit from it. You might think that Marathon would be Sony's last attempt at a successful game service title, but no, even before Marathon's release, Sony showcased Horizon Hunters Gathering, and that's where the game really looks like a worthy sequel to the Concord trilogy. And yet, this game wasn't cancelled, unlike, say, Naughty Dog's online game set in the Last of Us universe. Seriously? From the very first trailer, everything points to this being Concord 3. Who even asked for an online game in the Horizon universe? To be honest, I'm not a huge fan of the Horizon series itself, but I get that the game has its fans, but seriously, just look at how this looks. They would be better off just making the next installment already. Meanwhile, while everyone thought Concord 3 would be Horizon Hunters Gathering, guess which veteran studio managed to release its new game? A release that almost no one noticed. Quantic Dream. And yes, the studio known for its great games in the interactive cinema genre released an early access free-to-play competitive MOBA action game called Spellcasters Chronicles. Its online player count never been reached 1000 at its peak. Concord 3 came from where no one expected. But seriously, how many projects like these have already been released, and how many more are yet to come? Remember that AAA title from Ubisoft called Skull and Bones? Or perhaps someone recalls a game like Hyenas from a larger, more experienced publisher like Sega, which was cancelled literally right before its release, when it was already finished. Or perhaps we should recall Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, another game as a service that was supposed to last for years, but lost over 98 of its players in months and cost Warner Bros. $200 million.
As honorable warriors, we will show proper respect to this fallen hero by...
Show a little class, man. Holy shit. Congratulations.
Yeah, that one. The game also managed to bury such a wonderful series as Batman Arkham, since the game takes place in the same universe, and later, the game also buried such a legendary studio as Monolith, along with the game it was developing. And Warner Bros. Continues to shut down studios due to losses. For example, they recently shut down Warner Bros. Games Montreal. In short, there are already plenty of such examples, yet developers and publishers still can't seem to learn their lesson and realize that it's not worth pouring huge budgets into faceless game services. I even think that most developers understand this themselves. It's just that efficient managers at big corporations looked at their charts, saw how much money something like Fortnite makes, and decided, let's do the same. And they don't care that the studio had previously focused exclusively on single-player, story-driven games and simply lacks the experience to create a successful live service. Not to mention that the market is already saturated with such games. Even if we assume that every game released by developers will be a hit, people simply won't have enough time to play them all, since they objectively require a lot of time. Some are already playing Fortnite, some in Apex, and some in Tarkov, and then there are all sorts of Marvel rivals, PUBG, Dota, and Counter-Strike with their massive online player counts. And judging by the latest data, players are spending less and less time on game services. And the Battle Royale genre, which has dominated for the past 10 years, I guess, is becoming less popular. With players moving on to something else, it's obvious that people are tired of constant daily quests and battle passes and don't want to be stuck in one game. Such games turn into a routine rather than entertainment. And if you do play something like that, you will choose one game to devote your free time to. You simply won't have enough time for two, let alone three, such live services. So it turns out that the entire market is dominated by the old live service giants, and you won't be able to drive people away from them with yet another second-rate, soulless and uninspired live service game. Therefore, developers must either create a masterpiece that appeals to as many players as possible, one that offers some kind of new, unique and interesting experience, or the project is doomed to fail. And as we can see, some games don't even bother to create interesting and memorable character designs, let alone offer any kind of unique gameplay. Basically, attempts to create a good game as a service that will be a goldmine and bring in millions of dollars are all a game of Russian roulette and gambling. Too many factors have to align to create a Fortnite 2, aside from the fact that the game itself must be inherently good and interesting. We can only hope that now that companies have started canceling their live service projects, we will come to their senses and start making simply good games. Ones that, unlike Concord-like titles, pay off and bring profit to the companies, while players enjoy playing a good game, and everyone comes out ahead. Thanks for watching or listening to my video. Let me know your thoughts on Concord-Likes and whether you've played any of the games I mentioned earlier. See you very soon in my next video.